The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's Revelation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Google me, bitch! Google me!
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. It is November 13th, Wednesday. Today in the news, we're going to be talking more about Donald Trump's cabinet picks. We discussed this at length last night on episode 97 of Tuesdays with Perry, so check that out. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, share the podcast, leave a comment. Give me a thumbs up. Most appreciated. All right, let's get into the headlines for today, Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. Right, we're going to start out today with the New York Times. Who is Marco Rubio, said to be Trump's pick for Secretary of State? Now pay attention to this headline. Said to be Trump's pick for Secretary of State. The subhead goes on to say the three-term senator from Florida viciously criticized Donald J. Trump during the 2016 campaign, but has since ingratiated himself and become a foreign policy advisor to Mr. Trump. Well, he's a politician, so many people are worried about this pick because he seems to be a neocon, part of the establishment, part of the warmongering machine, a China hawk, etc. So a lot of people are surmising that, like with John Bolton, he's trying to send a signal. Let's just be aware, though, that Marco Rubio hasn't formally been tapped for Secretary of State. His name was put out there, leaked, floated, what have you. But unlike some of the other picks, he hasn't been formally named. So we're going to get into his name in just a second. But there have also been some other unconventional picks that also have been criticized, including Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, which is a formal nomination, formal pick by President Donald Trump, which we have some questions about. So let's first get into Marco Rubio. So Newsweek is reporting Trump keeps MAGA world guessing as his opponents welcome Marco Rubio report. Now the deal with this is his opponents welcome Marco Rubio. So what is exactly going on here? I believe he is trolling for a reaction by his opponents, by world leaders, and by his followers, MAGA itself. Whether Marco Rubio is going to be the pick, I think he's going to sort of let everybody decide. So his name was floated out there, so now they're watching the reaction to the pick. Most people don't like it. I'm ambivalent. Perry and I talked about it last night. Marco Rubio is a senator from Florida, so Perry's home state. So he welcomed it. There was also some talk about if Marco Rubio indeed takes the position of Secretary of State, that maybe Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, should put up for his Senate seat, appoint Lara Trump as senator. Could very well happen. We're going to have to see what happens with Marco Rubio. The AFP is reporting from Little Marco to Mr. Secretary, Rubio shows Trump China push. Now, again, this is signaling a hawkish view towards China, which most of MAGA welcomes, But like I said, John, like he did with John Bolton, sometimes you put people behind you, not that you trust, but that telegraphs a certain message toward your adversaries. Could very well be. I would have preferred somebody like Tulsi Gabbard as Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense. I also like Rick Grinnell in that position. So I was puzzled by some of the other picks like Pete Hegseth, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. Let's just stop here with the post-millennial. Trump taps former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe to lead CIA. From exposing fake Russia collusion to the Clinton campaign operation to catch the FBI's abuse of civil liberties. At the FISA court, John Ratcliffe has always been a warrior for truth and honesty with the American public. I agree. I like John Ratcliffe at this position. You know, what is going to change there is going to be curious. So let's talk more about picks here. Trump builds out national security team with picks of Hegseth for Pentagon, known for DHS. The problems I stated last night when Perry and I discussed this at length about Pete Hegseth. He is a National Guardsman that had combat duties in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he wrote some books very critical of the armed forces, particularly of the woke policies, et cetera, et cetera. So I know why Trump wants to put him in there is to kind of gut the Pentagon of all this DEI shit. That might be the case. But Pete Hegseth, although I'm not particularly fond of him as a Fox News host, he doesn't have any chief executive experience, you know, especially if you're heading up a position like this, one of the most powerful armed forces in the world with over 1 million service members. So I don't know if he's really up to the task. That's just my thing. If he gets there, if he's confirmed, that's another thing entirely. I think with a lot of these picks, he's sending either he's sending a message that he's turning everything on its head, regardless, or he is assembling a team of spokespeople. So who knows, because it seems like most of the picks are very comfortable in front of the camera and might be able to articulate policy very well. Maybe that's what he's looking for. We'll see. All right, we talked about this yesterday on National Review. Trump selects Kristi Noem as DHS secretary. And then the AP says Trump's defense choice stuns the Pentagon and raises question about the Fox News host's experience. I think I switched these around a little bit. And it's going to Pete Hegseth. That Pete Hegseth is perplexing for the Pentagon because most people that are picked to head up the Defense Department are usually former generals or people that have national security experience. So going back to the Federalist here, Trump shouldn't hire Kristi Noem or anyone else to run DHS. He should abolish it. I happen to agree with this. If you know your history, if you're watching and you're older than the age of 30, you might know that the Department of Homeland Security is a bloated bureaucracy. It's an umbrella agency that oversees a bunch of different agencies. And it was created after 9/11. So 9/11 spurred the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, which is really, I'm not going to get into it too much. I don't need more domestic law enforcement agencies overseeing the domestic population. 9/11 also spurred the creation of certain legislation known as the Patriot Act, which allows the U.S. government to spy, surveil, and interdict the domestic population. That is troubling in its own. The Federalist goes on to say, Kristi Noem isn't courageous enough to be Trump's Homeland Security Secretary. Goes on to say, if confirmed, Noem would oversee an agency with a wide-ranging mission. Indeed, the Wall Street Journal notes, the department is responsible for natural disasters, cybersecurity, transportation security, in addition to central role of immigration enforcement. Noem has an underserved reputation for courage because she was the only governor not to shut down her state in the name of COVID, but the reputation is completely undeserved. The truth is she attempted to get the power to shut down South Dakota, but the state legislature refused to give it to her. At least she acted constitutionally in that regard. She has been able to stand for much. She hasn't been able to stand for much of anything as governor, which puts in doubt in her ability to take hard line at DHS. Indeed, directly pertinent to the DHS job, Noem was one of the first governors to accept poorly vetted foreigners that are often falsely labeled as refugees. Is she a good pick for the Department of Homeland Security? She has executive experience, but DHS is really a huge umbrella agency overseeing Border Patrol, Secret Service, FEMA, and you could go on and on. I want to touch again on Lee Zeldin, CBS News. Zeldin's appointment as EPA head brings a mixed reaction from Long Island environmental leaders. It should. Most of these people were picked because they're loyal to Trump and are going to, execute what Trump wants them to do. This is the important thing, because you can't have department heads going against what the chief executive wants. AP is reporting here the people Trump picked for key positions so far. I just want to address some that we haven't yet. William McGinley, White House counsel. Trump says William McGinley, a lawyer who has served in the Trump's White House and in key political role this year, will be White House counsel. Also, John Ratcliffe, we talked about briefly before. Also, Stephen Witkoff, special envoy to the Middle East. Trump on Tuesday named real estate investor Stephen Witkoff to be special envoy to the Middle East. Witkoff is the president-elect's golf partner and was golfing with him at Trump's club in West Palm Beach. Well, that's from the Associated Press, so he's an envoy. What that means, that's, less stature than an ambassador. Moving on to other headlines, Trump says Musk Ramaswamy will form outside group to advise White House on government efficiency, or DOGE, the Department on Government Efficiency. So they're talking already about eliminating the Department of Education, which Ronald Reagan wanted to do way back when. Now that they have full control of government, will this indeed happen? We talked about this last night with Perry, talking about eliminating that position. Now, the states will still get funding from the federal government, just not with dictates attached to it. So the money will still be dispersed from the federal government to states. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it, on equal footing or not, but without condition, and it's been given to the states' departments of education, and they'll decide how they want to use it. So a lot of the Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Musk, they're going to fire a lot of people, and Musk's proposal is to give the folks that are let go 2-year severance, so it'll have less of an impact on the economy, because the government employs a lot of people, and that any undermining of that employment is going to have effects on the economy. Moving on, PJ Media is reporting election irregularities prompt GOP Senate candidate to consider contesting results. On election night, GOP Senate candidate Eric Hovde of Wisconsin led the vote count well into the middle of the night. Then Senator Tammy Baldwin benefited from a ballot dump at 4 a.m. Does that sound familiar? It sounds like 2020, where she received nearly an unprecedented share of the vote. Hovde, who had been silent about the election results since last week, posted a video to X revealing that he had been informed of precincts in Milwaukee that reported impossible turnout rates, and now he's considering his options about what to do about it. Well, what to do about it is obviously contest the election results. As I said before, this election cycle was little different than 2020, except that it's a little bit more closely monitored. The Democrats are still trying to cheat. They were cheating in Wisconsin, as we see by this last article, cheating in Arizona. They're cheating in Nevada. They're cheating in California, trying to take control of the House. The cheating is still going on. It's almost like they gave Trump the win to distract the Republicans from what is continually going on in the uncalled races. As I said time and time again, and I'll say it again, the reason they slow walking the vote count is to introduce fraudulent ballots to overturn, to change the will of the voter. The Wall Street Journal is reporting secret ballot for leader tests GOP senators and new Trump-era Republican lawmakers set to choose between John Thune, John Cornyn, and Rick Scott in a vote on Wednesday. Well, this is troubling. Everybody who's supporting of the president and MAGA and America First policy platform should call their Republican senators and tell them to vote for Rick Scott. The reason this is important is the Federalist reports Mitch McConnell reaches for one more power grab in Senate leadership vote. He may be giving up the leadership position, but I think he wants to maintain control, said Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. McConnell's departure and the shift in the Senate control has sparked a three-way race for Senate Majority Leader. In the running are Senator Rick Scott of Florida and McConnell acolytes John Thune of South Dakota and John Cornyn of Texas. The latter two establishment Republicans and consummate yes men to their mentor McConnell. Thune, Senate Republican whip, appears to hold the edge in the election, but he's had a rocky relationship with Trump over the years, just like his boss McConnell, whose loathing of the president-elect is well known. Thune has urged Trump to stay out of the Senate's leadership contest. So both establishment Republicans, Thune and Cornyn, are going to be the mouthpieces for McConnell, who is staying at his Senate post, but is just stepping down for leadership because of health issues, really. This will be nothing to cheer about unless Rick Scott is elected leader. So, as Molly Hemingway said in her post on X, John Thune is a Mitch McConnell protege. And at the height of the 2024 election, with Republicans trying to win office all over the country, McConnell said he planned to fight the GOP more than the Democrats after the election. Indeed. The Hill is reporting conservatives plot challenge against Johnson in internal speaker elections. The problem with this is if you read the article, hardline conservatives are plotting to challenge Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican in Louisiana, for the gavel during Wednesday internal House GOP elections. Four sources familiar with the matter told the Hill. They're not naming their sources. The sources who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss the sensitive internal deliberations said the conservatives are planning to nominate an alternative. Says who? This is bullshit. It says sources. So it cannot be confirmed or denied that this is actually occurring. The Hill is well known now as a propaganda outlet and for leaking things that are untrue or true, depending on the situation. Most people have to understand is that this is a divisive article trying to cause derision within the Republican House. Not surprising. Because the House is mostly MAGA. The Senate is there's still a lot of, establishment Republicans there as well. Excuse me, like I mentioned yesterday, I got the sinus infection, so it flares up every so often. And I can't breathe out of half of my face. Fox News is reporting Los Angeles Times owner announces paper will have a new editorial board soon, so all voices are heard. The LA Times came under the fire last month after it did not endorse a presidential candidate. Most newspapers, which are failing, are seeing the writing on the wall. You can't stake your business model on representing the point of view of less than 40% of the country. Because realistic, the liberal voices out there, although the media tries to portray it like half the country was supporting Kamala or the Democrats, it's 40%. Maybe. Daily Mail reports that CNN will axe top stars in layoffs that'll see hundreds fired as ratings continue to tank. And then Fox News reports ex-CNN boss rips media hyperbole on Trump. Their end of democracy claims will lead to credibility crisis. And that's why they're firing everybody. Chris Like was ousted by the network in 2023 after a brief stormy tenure, and he tried to do the same thing. But the problem is the only people that are watching, and that's why like places like MSNBC have to be careful, because the only people that are watching are far left people. And so when you start changing your tune and giving any airtime to Trump folks, they get all pissed off because they don't want to hear any other point of view. It's the liberal media bubble. And that's why all these people on TikTok are going around raging, because they thought it was really close. It was never really close, and everybody knew that. But you think it is because you're a postmodernist that think your subjective viewpoint has any attachment to reality. And it doesn't. Unless you look at things objectively, you will never be firmly grounded in reality. National Review says HHS spent hundreds of millions of dollars on DEI initiatives under Biden, watchdog fines. This is sort of related to the Hegseth thing, the Hegseth nomination. This is the problem, spending hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on DEI or other reverse racism policies. We live in a meritocracy, or at least we used to, and tax dollars shouldn't be spent on pushing people that are unqualified. So, and that's my problem with Hegseth. I don't really think he's qualified to lead the Department of Defense, but it's like the Susie Wiles thing. Is Susie Wiles going to be chief of staff forever? No, I don't think so. Probably for a year or two, maybe even less, until all the staffing is done and everything is running smoothly, and then she'll pull back and Stephen Miller will be chief of staff. But the problem is that we shouldn't be spending money on this stuff. You need to spend money on running things, not injecting your racial beliefs, especially in the military, but in any of the departments. Hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a fair playing field as far as hiring goes, and a want to have a diverse staff. But these people have to be qualified, and unfortunately, DEI was pushing the exact opposite. They were pushing incompetence over competence. And I think that was the same thing with Ketanji Jackson Brown. No, what was her name? Ketanji Brown. The new Supreme Court justice, I don't think that she was qualified either. I think they just wanted to get a black justice, a black female justice in there, and maybe she was the most qualified of the black female candidates, but I don't think she was the most qualified person to be named justice. The Associated Press, U.S. government worker charged with leaking classified documents on Israel's plan to strike Iran. Now, this was a CIA officer who leaked the plans, and I guess has been fired. I believe so. But this just goes to show that the Biden administration never had Israel's back. And why would you leak the... there are several reasons that you could think about leaking those plans, but I don't think that was fair to Israel. Who knows? I don't think striking Iran was a good idea either, but it was very limited, and then Iran didn't retaliate either. So the Middle East thing is a difficult thing to unwind or unpack. Mostly because the Israeli government was involved in initiating the October 7th attack, and people don't like to hear that, but there's overwhelming evidence that they knew the attack was coming and had a stand down, not to mention that Israel's involvement in creating Hamas in the first place. So I think all this suffering could have easily been avoided. But a lot of people aren't going to like to hear this. It was actually the leftists in the government that were using this as a ploy to undermine Netanyahu's popularity. And they were hoping that Netanyahu's reaction to the Hamas attack, which they knew was going to happen, would draw world condemnation and would sully his reputation and eventually force him out of office. That wasn't really successful either. So all they did is create suffering, to marginalize a successful conservative. I'm no fan of Netanyahu, by the way, just so you know. Whatever. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Israeli. I have no skin in the game, so I don't care. It's really, if you believe in democracy, if you're an Israeli, and you voted for him, so be it. As long as the elections weren't undermined, which is problematic, like what happened in Brazil. The overwhelming vote was for Bolsonaro, but it was undermined by all the leftists in the Brazilian government and court, and you know what happened there. Washington Times is reporting judge recuses himself in Arizona fake elector case after email surfaces. The judge recused himself Tuesday for presiding over Arizona's fake elector case after an email surfaced in which he told fellow judges to speak out against attacks on Democrat Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign for presidency. In the August 29th email, Maricopa County Judge Bruce Cohen lamented that he didn't speak out when Harris was called a DEI hire, believes that white men must speak out against unfair treatment against women, and raise historical lessons from the Holocaust about the need to speak up when people are attacked. Cohen didn't specify who made the comment regarding Harris. When we allow our colleagues who identify as being a person of color to stand when there are those who claim that their ascension was an equity hire, not just equity, but sexual quid pro quo, rather than based solely upon exceptionalism. I don't think Kamala Harris is exceptional either. But the fact is, he recused himself good. He was forced to do so because this email was released. another biased judge on the court. So it's one thing if you have biases, but, you know, the leftists blatantly put it out there like it's just a mea culpa. You know, that it's just a fact that, you know, people should automatically accept people of color because, you know, Kamala Harris is not exceptional. Sorry. You'd be hard-pressed to come up with an argument for that. But he did it anyway, because he's obviously a leftist. The left always sticks together, even if someone doesn't have any merit. They're like, but they're on our side, and they've been discriminated against, even though there's no evidence of that, et cetera, et cetera. Next article up from the Telegraph. Why feminists in the U.S. are shunning marriage, sex, and children after Trump's win. Young liberal women are shunning marriage, dating, and sex with men after Trump's election victory. If you haven't gone on TikTok or looked at some of these lunatic videos, go on libs of TikTok and check it out. People are insane. They're fucking insane. All they do by showing this, they think they're showing their solidarity in some sort of activist movement. You're in a cult, and you're in a cult because you're insane, or you were made insane by the cult. This circle jerk of reinforcing not just stupid ideology, but subjective reality. It's just, people are crazy. They're just crazy. Trump isn't going to take away your rights. He doesn't want to kill you. He doesn't want to, deporting people that are here illegally that were abetted by the Biden administration, but are still here undocumented, illegally, and they're going to be removed by the Trump administration. That's why it was not fair for the Biden administration to invite them here when the majority of the American electorate didn't want that. But Biden did it anyway. So now Trump has to undo it. Like I said, I'm torn on the whole mass deportation thing. I think obviously criminals should go first. Whether workplace raids happen or not, I'm a libertarian. So if people are here and, they're not dependent on the state, I'm a little bit torn. Whether they should be granted amnesty, that's another thing entirely. But whatever they do, it's under the guidance of the law. And so the people that are here illegally are breaking the law. The Biden administration broke the law. Calling them asylum seekers doesn't change the fact. Most of them are not. They're economic refugees fleeing poor countries for a better life, and were invited here by the Biden administration. And they shouldn't have been. So, should they be removed? Yes. I would like to say, I hope no one is accidentally rounded up that are here legally, unless, of course, it's Anna Navarro. If Holman accidentally scoops her up and deports her, I don't have a problem with that. Just kidding. I think, people are here illegally, they should be removed. And also, all the children have to be found. There are over 300,000 children that are unaccounted for. The Biden administration stopped the DNA testing that would have proved if people are here with their actual parents or they're just being used. Whether parents should be broken up with their families or whatever, I'm going to leave that to the experts. But definitely, I think you should start with criminals. It would be a better PR move to, in the beginning, show ICE rounding up criminals than, rounding up the abuelas out there. Next article up from the New York Post. Special counsel Jack Smith plans to retire before Trump takes office. Why is this surprising? It isn't surprising. None of these cases had merit, and none of them should have went forward. They went forward with the blessing of leftists as political subterfuge to try to keep Trump out of office. And now that he's been elected, they don't really care to pursue the cases anyway, because it'll just be a waste of taxpayer dollars for the most part. The Federalist is reporting FEMA agency fired for bypassing homes with Trump signs, says she was following agency protocol. To be fair here, this woman, first of all, told her workers who were providing aid after the hurricanes in the South, told her charges to avoid houses that had Trump signs. That is discriminatory and obviously wrong, and she got fired. But she's trying to say now that the agency said, well, you have to use avoidance to avoid confrontation. Well, you work for the American people, so if the American populace is confronting you, you should sit there and listen. So, but their thing is always work in pairs. You know, they're afraid of people getting attacked. What's evident? There's no evidence of that even happening. Maybe isolated incidents, but certainly not a widespread case. So she's saying now that the agency was telling her to avoid Trump houses because those people were more confrontational with FEMA. But first of all, you can't use that as a generalization, because some Trump people might be very nice and want help. So there's no way to know. You can't use a blanket statement and say all Trump people are confrontational, because there might have been some incidents where you were confronted angrily by people that might have been Trump supporters. Maybe. And usually you're confronted because it's not, hey, I don't want your help. It's usually, how come you weren't here sooner? Next headline here from Newsweek: inflation rise expected for October, raising concerns for Fed rate cuts. Obviously, the Wall Street Journal reported inflation did pick up in October. CPI up 2.6 on the year. It was only up like 1/10 of a point. Now, did the Fed raise rates after the Trump election because things were looking better? Or is it a way to sabotage a Trump economy? Hard to say. This will surely or hopefully rule out another rate cut for December. Because the problem is, as I said, 2.6 inflation isn't terrible. It's not great. But the problem is, as compared to GDP, it's a problem. That was only about 40 minutes today. There wasn't too much to cover. There was sort of a lull. There was a flurry of Trump cabinet picks yesterday. I sort of covered them a few yesterday morning and then the rest last night. Like I said, Marco Rubio hasn't been formally picked yet, so we'll have to see about that. He might be replaced. Again, you're going to have to excuse me. I got a sinus infection. It seems to get better, and then it gets worse. It gets better. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget, you're under attack psychologically, biologically. So stay hip to that trick. Join me every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. on Rumble, live. Check out my other website, libpop.org. Learn about libertarian populism. I'm also on X, Getter, Minds, True Social, Getter, Substack. So check me out there. Thanks for joining me today. See you tomorrow. Respect.
I'm an American. I have rights. I'm an American. I have rights.
You can't handle the truth.
Rudy's Revelation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.